everyone! Last time I made a video on memorizing, everyone found it really useful and I had so many comments thanking me and asking me to make more videos about memorizing. And I also had some really amazing comments from people who had some different ideas about memorizing. So I thought we'd have a look at some of those today and then put it into practice with a different technique. So if you haven't seen that first video, then go and have a look. There's a link in the cards and make sure you watch that. It's called Memorizing in Shapes. And I explained in that video why memorizing is such a useful thing to do. It really breaks down the barrier between us and the audience and also helps with performance anxiety. I find it much less stressful to perform from memory when I'm really solid with a piece rather than having to rely on a piece of paper. And I think it also allows you to put so much more expression into a piece. And so it's a really freeing thing to know something from memory. But I also think that everyone's brain thinks a little differently. So some people will memorize better with some techniques than others. So last time, some people found memorizing in shapes useful, but this time I'm offering a different perspective. And I wanted to show you how some people actually spoke about this in the comments. So let's have a little read. B. Fisher says, wonderful, have you heard the term chunking? For when you chunk the notes of a bracket together. I feel like I explained that clumsily. I'd love to hear more tips in addition to this great technique. Great job making analysis very doable, applicable, and non-intimidating. And then she put a little clapping emoji. Thanks so much. And I think that's Barbara. I appreciate your comment. I have heard of chunking and I've used it a lot myself and I was already wanting to do it in a video. So thanks for bringing that up. And there's another comment that's particularly interesting. It's quite a long one, so get yourself ready for it. Don't be intimidated. I will explain it in simpler terms afterwards. I am in college now as a harp performance major. Because I have such large amounts of difficult pieces to prepare and memorize for concerts, my go-to is 10 pennies. Correct repetition in small sections is everything. I split each page into repair points where it is easy to start for practice, usually about every 4 to 8 measures with a pedal diagram, and then put 10 pennies on a stand or desk beside me and move them aside after each repetition. Then I put the smaller repair points into larger sections and 10 penny that. It can be tedious, and with beginner or young students I suggest 5 pennies and not as many sets as I have to do, but it can be made into a fun game. It is easier to do for smaller songs on a lever harp, so hopefully this helps. Usually I play through sections so many times for familiarity, technique, fingering, rhythm and phrasing that I automatically memorize them without trying. Oh, well that's great when that's the case, but for some of us we have to put a little bit more specific effort into memorizing. It doesn't happen naturally for me. So for those of you who found that a little bit intimidating, it's because Sally Johnson is playing at such a high level and she's amazing. But I'll explain it in simpler terms that I think we'll do it with 5 pennies because this is a kind of easy piece we're going to be looking at. And basically what you'll do is break the piece up into manageable sections and you do that section 5 times. You repeat it 5 times until it's so familiar and easy, and then you take another small section and you do that 5 times over, and each time you're going to be using a little pile of pennies or stones or something, and that's just going to help you to keep track. So you play the section through once, you put the penny to the side, then the second time you put the second penny until eventually you've done it 5 times and you move on to the next section. And later on you can join the sections together to make bigger sections, and that's going to help you get through the piece. So we're going to put this into practice now. We're going to use, again, the same piece we did last time, my arrangement of Wild Mountain Time for harp and voice, or you could do it with another harpist or a flautist if you don't sing. And that's freely available for download, so check the link in the cards and in the description box and print it out so that you have it in front of you and then we can memorize it together. So we're going to do a little bit of chunking now. It always makes me think of vomiting. So that's kind of weird, but it's a kind of commonly used term. So we're still going to use the word memorizing in chunks or chunking. So let's have a look at the first measure of Wild Mountain Time. First measure, and that's going to be our first chunk. So we're going to play through that another 4 times. So if you have your little pile of 5 pennies or stones or beads or something, put aside 1. Now we're going to do it again. That's number 2. you should be playing along with me. And if you want to do it a little slower, then just pause the video, play it more slowly. You should be playing at a tempo that's really comfortable for you. Now we're going to take the second measure. That's 1, 2, 3, that's 4, that's 5. Okay, so hopefully those first 2 measures are in your head now. If you're finding this a little fast, don't stress, just pause it. I'm just trying to get through this quickly so that you get all the information, and you can try it at a slower pace if you need to. Then we put the 2 measures together. And then you're going to play that through 5 times. Let's just do it once more with the video. Through the whole piece like that, and it actually does start to feel more manageable. So later on it's going to be things like, and you just practice that 5 times over, and everything starts to come together. And then once you've done your 1 measure at a time and built it up into groups of 2 measures, then you'll build it up into phrases of 4 measures, and eventually you start to get to the point where the whole piece is in your memory. And I think one of the biggest tricks with this way of memorizing is actually that you end up playing each measure so many times over that it's just drumming it into your brain, getting it into your fingers, kind of muscle memory, and you're tricking yourself into playing the piece a million times over. But I think also what it's doing is it's intentionally playing each measure many times. What we sometimes do when we're practicing a piece is we start at the beginning, and we always end up playing the beginning part of the piece the most times over, and the end of the piece we don't know so well because we played it less frequently, because we kind of get stuck with something in the middle of the piece, and then we go back to the beginning, and then we go back to the beginning, and the end of the piece doesn't really get memorized. So I think by intentionally doing it in chunks like this, we really cover the whole piece. And another little tip for those of you who might still struggle to get through the whole piece, try doing it in chunks from the end of the piece, working backwards. So starting with the last bar or the last measure of the piece, and then doing the second last measure, then doing the second last and the last measure together, and building up from the end of the piece. That works very well for some people. I prefer doing it from the beginning, but some of my students prefer memorizing from the end of the piece. So give it a try, and maybe that will also really help you. If you found this video helpful, I think you might enjoy watching my example student videos, which I'm now putting regularly up on Patreon, which is super exciting. It's so much fun to watch somebody else actually learning these concepts, and you can learn alongside them. It's quite different to me just talking to the camera. You see me teaching one of my Skype students, and then you can feel like you learning alongside them. If you're a teacher, maybe you're seeing how I teach and how I encourage my students through the lessons. You can kind of learn some teaching techniques, and it's really fun. So you might have enjoyed watching the video with Kayla, learning to sing and play. It's a similar thing, but I'm putting it up every month on my Patreon page. So Patreon is a really great place to get some extra content and a lot of support, particularly for self-taught harpists, but I think every harpist will find something really useful on there. So make sure you check out my Patreon page and see whether that's something you'd like to be involved in. And also put a comment down below if you found this video helpful, or if you have any other ideas about memorizing. And then if this is your first time on my channel, welcome. It's so nice to have you here. I'm so glad you've joined us, and I hope you subscribe because I put up new videos every Thursday, and I'd love to see you here again. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.